Muldel books and magazines that he was going to bring back to the library. He was going to, but he never quite did. So they were stacked up in the living room, and now they'd been all shoved over to the side to make room for a live tree. The tree actually had been shoved over to the side on Christmas Day, jammed up against the coffee table to make room for a brand new, enormous flat-screen TV, a gift to the whole family that Mr. Muldel had spent all afternoon unpacking and wiring up and bolting to the wall. Mrs. Muldel had been reorganizing in the kitchen. She was trying to pack away some old dishes she was going to give away. She'd gotten about half of them in boxes, and the other half were stacked up on the floor and kind of forgotten about, so that you had to lean over them every time you went to answer the phone. Daughter Judy was promising to go through her gadgets and decide which ones could go off to electronics recycling, and she'd never quite gotten through that either. She now had a new iPhone and a new iPod and a new dancing Lady Gaga alarm clock docking station for the iPod, and her room looked like an electronics warehouse. There were manuals and cords everywhere. Well, it bothered them all that the house was such a mess, just not enough that anybody got around to doing anything about it. Mr. Muldel had visions of them dying, tripping over things, trying to get out of the house in a fire or some other emergency, but being no better than the rest, he couldn't lecture anybody about it. Christmas dinner itself had been kind of chaotic. Mrs. Muldel's sister called, just as she was at a particularly delicate moment where she had to pull the turkey out of the oven and baste it with a couple of varieties of sauces, and she had sloshed hot turkey juices on her wrist, had to drop the phone, nearly dropped the turkey, rushed over to the sink. Fortunately, when she ran some cold water over it, the burn was minor, the dinner was delicious. So things were chaotic. Mr. Muldel wasn't really thinking too much about that stuff as he finally settled down in his armchair with a glass of spiked eggnog to watch a stupid but harmless Christmas special. Well, Mrs. Muldel found him there snoring after the kids had gone up to bed. And having had a bit of the spiked eggnog herself, she kind of looked at him as another mess that she didn't want to clean up. So she fiddled with the TV, still didn't wake up, and she decided he looked comfortable enough. She propped his bare feet up on a footstool, and even though it was Florida, she tucked a blanket over him and toddled off to bed. About 2 a.m., Mr. Muldel woke up to the sound of crackling flames. He looked up and he saw the wall engulfed in fire. Groped around for his glasses and couldn't find them. Fire! Fire! Oh my God! Leaped to his feet, tripped over the blanket, fell headfirst into the box from the TV, recovered, dashed into the kitchen, slid on a little puddle of turkey grease, and skidded across the room like a base runner coming into third, crashed feet first into that pile of dishes. Groped for the phone, found only the wireless base station. The phone was on the other side of the room. He didn't know where. Couldn't call 911. Fire! Fire! He couldn't figure out why the smoke alarm wasn't going off. It went off every time he made bacon, but not now. Mrs. Muldel heard her husband raising the alarm. She tripped over a basket of clothes, came up with staticky socks all over her nightgown. Chrissy leaped out of bed and nearly choked herself because she'd fallen asleep with her earphones in and it was wrapped around the bedpost. She came up with cords and adapters all over her, festooned. The girls rushed downstairs. Meanwhile, Mr. Muldel had grabbed the fire extinguisher, he'd found it underneath the sink, ran into the kitchen, and he sprayed for all he was worth. Family found him there, looking somewhere between triumphant and puzzled, because he couldn't see flames anymore, but he could still hear them. Mrs. Muldel handed him his glasses. As the world came into focus, he saw that the brand new TV was dripping with fire extinguisher foam. Then Muldel picked up the remote, and she clicked off the Yule log DVD that she had left playing in a loop just to make things a little bit more cheery. Well, as you can imagine, it was quite a while before anybody got to sleep that night. There was yelling, there was crying, I'm sorry to say some cursing, but they unplugged the TV, they had plenty of old magazines that they could wave at the fire alarms to clear the smoke, and things finally settled down. It was a couple of weeks, though, before they began to see the humor of the situation. It helped that Sony turned out to be willing to exchange the TV with relatively few questions asked. It actually had been smoking by the time they were done with it because of things shorting out, but their New Year's resolution, of course, was to try and be a little bit neater. And although they wouldn't win any Good Housekeeping awards, they've been doing much better. Mr. Toastmaster.